So now, second estate. This consisted of 1.5%, right, of the population of France, and it held disproportionately power and privileges. Okay, we see here first nobility of the sword, right? Basically, they were the descendants of medieval feudal lands lords. So definitely they had lands, right? Traditionally, they associated with the military services to the crown. They enjoyed the right to carry the sword. Okay, they owned vast estates. They collected the feudal dues and often resisted reforms. So all the two above estates and the king are definitely going to resist to any kind of reform. Another one over here is nobility of the robe, right? So it is seen that they occupied the key judicial and the administrative post. You can say that nobility of the robe, sword was more of like a hereditary social post which was continued. And this one is your administrative and judicial post. They did not possess the traditional right to bear the arms, though without the ancient feudal lineage, they were integrated. This is what I was saying, right? They were integrated and they enjoyed the privileges like tax exemptions. Is it clear? Now, this is important. Approximately third estate, they were 98% of the population. You see how large it was. And it is said that it was the most deprived order and they had no significant rights. But they were burdened with a lot of taxes. One over here was your urban population, or you can say bourgeois class, right? Traders, lawyers, government servants, clerical staff, industrialists, wealthy educated people, but politically they were powerless. You can say intellectuals. They played a leading role in initiating the French Revolution. So who will come over here? Intellectuals who are well read, right? Who are into trade and business. Another class who will be residing in the urban spaces will be your workers and artisans in town. They are dependent on daily wages and they are definitely vulnerable to inflation and food security. I just discussed about the bread rights, right? The king is involved in total luxury. And 7 years war are happening. So what about these people? What about the food? Because these people are totally dependent on the daily rates of the items they buy for their self-sustenance in the small towns, or you can say cities. Now, there was a rural population of peasant. Now, this formed the largest section of the third estate. They were paid heavily taxes, right? They paid lot of feudal dues, giving to the feudal lords also money. And they were giving tithes to the church. Tithes are religious taxes, okay, to the church. Also, there were some well-off peasants who owned small plots of land. There were poor peasants who were landless or marginal and they were living in extreme poverty. Now you see it in this diagram. First estate, Roman Catholic Church, right? They totally scorned the Enlightenment idea. They were against this, okay? Second, made up of rich nobles. They also disagreed with the Enlightenment ideas. The third included the bourgeois, the urban lower class, and the peasant. They had no power to influence the government, and they were the one who embraced the Enlightenment idea. See the population division. 98% third estate. We just discussed that. Less than 1% first estate. Approximately 2% your second estate. Now, so first point political we have seen. Second point social cause. What it led to? Basically, the social cause, it led to the seeds of revolution because of the stark difference which existed amongst the three orders, first, second, and third estate in the French society, right? And the king over here, he was unable to manage this rising inequality. King has no time. उसके पास time ही नहीं है, right? He is busy in luxury. He is busy in sending his nobles to fight the 7 years of war, right? So when will he listen to the common man? And the social and so a strong feeling of dissatisfaction and injustice grew among the members of the third estate, which led to the seeds of the revolution. Consequently, this discontent slowly transformed into rage and resentment. Okay, now one more thing you understand, we'll see fall of Bastille or fall of the ancient regime. So this resentment of the common man will be against the ancient regime that's present in France, or you can say the ruling government. There were denial of rights for them. They were heavily taxed. They were neglected of their grievance. Ultimately, it set the ground for the third estate to revolt against the king and his family, marking the beginning of the French Revolution. So this social division you have to understand in your answers. This is very much different from the revolutions you study in. Did we saw any kind of such deep or such clear-cut social revolution in American Revolution? No. Social division in American Revolution? No. American Revolution, we did the question 2013 UPSC has asked that American Revolution was majorly a form of, you can say, economic exploitation against the mercantilist or the imperialist policies of Britain. But here, social cause is one of the important factors. Now, in the economic crisis, we have already discussed that financial burden of the France had increased during the time of Louis XV, but it was the poor policies and incompetencies of Louis XVI that worsened the situation further, because there was lot of mounting debt and there was lot of extravagant expenditure, right? Why national debt was increasing at such an alarming rate? Due to frequent wars, right? Also, more than half of the state's total revenue was spent on the interest payments. Okay. Despite the crisis, there was no reduction in extravagant lifestyle. All this was happening, but they never reduced their extravagant lifestyle. So again, definitely deepening of the financial crunch in the nation we will see over here. Another thing over here is that revenue measures and the tax burden was totally on the third estate. A man who has just gone as a wage laborer into the city, if you keep on, if the inflation rises, definitely the rise, or there is going to be price rise of the bread, of eggs, of daily commodity which you buy, right? So how can he, there is no increase in the wages, right? So how is he going to afford all those things? So common man will complain about this, right? To cope up with the crisis, the king began selling the important government offices, right? And who is going to buy these government offices? Nobles, right? We saw nobles of sword. They were already from a feudal lineage. Then we saw noble of robes. And understand that if there is selling of such administrative and judicial process, what is going to happen in the country? Definitely it is going to lead to corruption, right? Also, it is said that he attempted to raise the revenue through increased taxation. Despite all this, right? Examples of the taxes which were included was, first one over here is land tax paid by the peasant, which is known as tellai. Second over here is salt tax. It heavily burdened the poor. Third was your capitation. It was imposed on every family head. You can say head tax. And last one was tithe, that is 1/10 of the produce was to be paid to the church. So you see a lot of heavy taxation, and amazingly all this was only on the third estate, not on the second estate or the first estate. Heavy tax on the third estate. Now